Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be talking about perception, cognition, and programming the mind. And I'm going to be working on my tree painting. I've been working on this painting for some time. I work on it real sporadically when I get inspiration. And I have inspiration today. So we're going to be working on this one today. So the reason why I chose perception to talk about is because I feel that is one of the strong points in actually making a difference with meditation, with mental maturity, with spiritual studies, with anything like that. We're going to see the most practical gain when it comes to working on your perception. Perception is like a wily roller coaster of variables that play into what's actually what you're actually perceiving. The brain actually weeds more information out than it lets in. So most of what the brain actually perceives, it filters out through a variety of brain structures to negate the need for like a 101 neurology course. We're just going to kind of refer to some general areas of the brain instead of real specifics. But basically, you have one perception that you can trust the most, and that's your sense of smell. Your sense of smell goes directly to your hypothalamus, which is the memory center of the brain. It's kind of like the database, like the memory database of the brain. So the theme of this painting that I'm working on is trees. I'm using a fan brush here. I'm working with acrylics. And somehow a tree grew out of this white spur. But these trees, well, they're different trees. They're on this world of wherever this painting is taking place at. So they all grow kind of differently in different colors. We're discovering how they grow together. But I think that off this white clump here, I think there's going to be several kind of little like bush guys growing out here. They're going to have like a stumpier kind of leg kind of thing, and then they're going to kind of go up, maybe like palm trees. Oh, that one decided to grow a little bit larger than I anticipated. They always decide to do their own thing. Kind of like perceptions. See, perceptions don't just go through one area of the brain. They go through a multitude of areas. And you also have this area called the Wernicke's area of the brain. This area of the brain, it's kind of like the label center of the brain. It labels things. And you like label stuff, and then you store it in areas. So you get data in and you label it as what you feel it is, right? What you feel it is based on your experiences and what you've been told, what you've accepted from what you've been told to believe, what you've accepted. I think that's always key to remember, is we have this ability to accept and deny information. You can actually say, no, I don't believe this. Yes, I do believe this. I choose to hold on to these memories. I choose to disregard this as falsehood. We have that freedom. Or maybe it's fate. I'm not to say. I'm not to say right now. But so you perceive things. Now I have a test. I call it the figure exam. What it is in general is I put a figure in front of the patient, and then it's kind of like an ink block test. You ask them what they're perceiving, and everybody kind of has a different. What do you see here? Some people will say cross, T, X. Everybody sees something different, but the point behind it is there's no real wrong answer. You can't really even be wrong in the answer. It's just, what do you see it as? And when you answer the question, there's kind of an array of answers that have a statistical deviation. That like these types of people will typically give these types of answers, kind of thing. So it's in a way, I have a feeling that this one, this one just, it just kind of grows up here, I think, right there. So if you allow what you're thinking to just kind of go, if you're the victim of your thoughts, what happens to you is that while you're allowing yourself to just think and feel whatever random stuff comes to you, memories and impressions of things are left behind. So you start to form heuristics. Heuristic means shortcut, means mental shortcut. You start to form mental shortcuts that facilitate other, makes it easier to think other things. It facilitates other thoughts. And so we see now why there's real strength to meditating, because in meditation, you're starting to control your thoughts. You're starting to at least bottle them up to a point where you can track them. You're focusing on them. The goal behind meditation is not to control your thoughts. That's a prison, I feel, that we can all fall in really easy. You get there and you got to control your thoughts. And the harder you try to control your thoughts, the more random thoughts are going to come to you. And, the thought factory that is our brain, it's a complex dragon of a beast. There's so many neurotransmitters that affect how you think that are not even mapped yet. The science, it's actually taking cross-examination of the neurotransmitter network by several different sciences, including gastrologists, to really figure out the entire map of the neurotransmitters. What that means is neurotransmitters make you think things like when you're hungry, when you have physiologic desires, then a lot of times these physiologic desires can be centered in like a memory response, or from one of the multitude of transmitters that a lot of neuroscientists don't exactly know where they're generated from the body. So the real truth is that a lot of neurophysicists, a lot of neural psychologists don't want to say is that they don't really know where all the thoughts come from. We can't really begin to even describe to you knowing. We only kind of know how the brain reacts under certain statistics. We're like, okay, well, we know that when this happens, this is going on, but we don't know all the other factors behind it because there's so many of them that just aren't mapped. We just don't know them yet. So it's so difficult to even begin to try to hypothesize on where a lot of these desires and thoughts come from. But mastering the mind is more of knowing why you're thinking what you're thinking instead of controlling what you're thinking. That's where the practical value comes in. As I believe that, if you fully integrate with what we could describe as the full self, that you have far more access than you would with just the egotistical conscious mind. We can track where the egotistical conscious mind comes from with EKGs and various different scientific implements to analyze electrical stimulus in the brain. We can basically see what you're consciously thinking, where you're thinking it in your brain. We can basically tell. But there's a lot of other information that's going on that we don't know. I'm cleaning my brush right now, and I just looked up a chat. I do want to know what you perceive. Feel free to chat and say whatever, and I'll just answer it. If you ask something in chat, I'll answer it. So go ahead, first and two. I'm waiting for. I want to know what you perceive. That's valuable. I think that in order to truly know what a self perceives, you have to know how others are viewing things as well. Which is like we come into like the formations of languages and how you even start to learn. And that's a quagmire in itself. Anybody that reaches any sort of level of what could be deemed as enlightened is going to have a lot of compassion for people that are at quote unquote low levels. Oh yeah, the painting. Yeah, it just kind of came together. Like I was trying to do something, and then I made a mistake once upon a time, and then I was going to throw this whole thing away, and then I was like, no, wait a minute, there's a tree here, and so I started just kind of growing it out, and it's not done yet. I got a lot of work to do, but there is this thing called pragmatic assertion. It's where one gains what could be considered close to a universal understanding of the reality. The largest challenge behind this thought pattern, behind a pragmatic, assertive thought pattern, is that it's laborious. In order to describe things, a lot of times you have to use words that might be a little bit too like complex in their general setting for a sentence. And so you have to create these like elaborate ways of saying things. I almost wonder that if like a lot of maybe really, really like in the past, you look at some of the people that were trying to communicate some things, and then maybe they were extremely pragmatically minded, and other people were just functioning at such a different level that that their thought process was mistaken. I'm actually going to kind of show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here. I got a piece of paper, and I'm going to show you a little bit what I'm talking about because it's valuable. So when you look at this thing, what I would like you to do is I'd like you to just, kind of think about what it is outright. Don't think about what somebody would want. Just say what comes to mind, right? When you see this. Uh-oh. See if I can get it right there. Oh, that don't look very good. I need one of those anyways, what I'm referring to is symbolic interactionism. When you learn things as a child, you don't have any reference point to learn things from. So you build things kind of off each other. In early years, it leads to very like some thoughts that may lead you towards confusion, you know. And we don't ever all see the same color at once. You know, we're all left seeing different colors. You guys see purple and black, and we call it the same word. It means the same thing. You know, if I said, look at the white dot and look at the black spot and look at the red line, we're all going to be kind of looking at the same thing, right? But here's the thing. The eyes perceive things differently. So even though the mouth and the mind agree of two different people, the eyes do not agree. Everybody's eyes sees shade at a different color. And even though they can label them as such, color memory is very, very difficult to replicate. It's very, very difficult to replicate the color from memory of something. The yin and yang, you know, that's actually something I've thought a lot. Thanks for kind of bringing that up. Uh, you know, in my perception of the yin and yang, I kind of saw something a long time ago. You know, the whole idea of balance, we're so easily taken up with looking at the weights on both ends and forgetting about the fulcrum. Balance is impossible without a fulcrum. You know, you have to have two, in order to have balance, you have two equal weights at equal condition. You know, there's different conditions that you can balance upon. Weight, mass, density, all these things play in. Length of the lever arm. There's a lot of different variables that come into play, but essentially balance requires, you know, two weights, a landing point that they're on, like a middle ground that they're connected to, and a fulcrum. So, you know, it's easy to get caught up. You know, we think about yin and yang and we think about balance, and it's so easy to think about just the positive and negative forces of reality. The manifestation of those forces is very obvious. Uh, like with, for example, electricity, you know, positive and negative. It's a very easily describable manifestation. Positive is on the higher end of a polarity scale than the negative side of that polarity scale. So it's easier to see these two events, these two variables. But I think that as we move into these higher orders of complexity of thought, you know, as we move further into our technological abilities, we need to have higher orders of complexity of thought. Otherwise, we're going to kill ourselves with these stupid toys we're making. We have to be able to think of things differently in a very proactive, pragmatic method. Otherwise, we're going to react to things aggressively and fearfully. You know, it's becoming, the whole idea of enlightenment and awakening is kind of cool and fuzzy, but with the advent of the weaponry and technology that's coming into being in the next 10 years, I think that it's becoming a necessity for the survival of our species to come to a higher level of perception, because that's the fundamentals of our understandings. I think that a lot of times, through various measures, we allow very narcissistic people to become leaders, and they're not emotionally stable enough to handle some of the decisions that they make, and so they get entanglements, and they cause other problems, and they don't foresee political situations quite clearly. They get stuck in a narcissistic agenda, and it's time for that to stop. You know, there's starting to be a very high level of educated community amongst the common people, And it's time that we really put a lot of our facets in order. We really start controlling what we're perceiving. Because if we want to watch TV and we want to watch what they're pumping out on these shows, then your mind is going to be consumed with these images and these sounds that are not of you. They're not of something that's designed for your benefit. It's something that's designed for your distraction, that they didn't even know you when they designed it. So it's when you need to really get in control of your perceptions, and the more that how we do that is through the various meditative techniques that are available from various ancient cultures. There's a lot of different techniques available. Buddhism and monotheistic religions, like everybody, it seems like everywhere you go on the planet, everybody's got their own different kind of way of doing things, but everybody's doing kind of about the same thing. You just got to find out where you fit, what's good for you. And what everybody ends up working on is perception. That's the fundamental thing. It's difficult to really think about, because what you're thinking about is what you're thinking when you get to the raw root of it. And I fully believe this, if you're going to control the reality that you live in to achieve a very, very high level of control, you're going to want to have control of the future of it. And the future control you can really have is your perception of what's happening. And if you have like a denial variable that's keeping you from realizing your true situation that you're in, a lot of times you can end up in really bad situations. A lot of people end up in really bad situations, and they do it recurrently. And it's easy to continually blame somebody else, when you're in that thought pattern. One of my things that I'm doing with this painting is like, I'm not going to make any of the trees have normal leaves. Like they all have to have really weird, different, out of the ordinary. I'm going to like look at it and be like, okay, it's supposed to be like this, and I'm going to make it the opposite. For instance, this tree kind of looks like an oak tree. So I'm not going to put oak leaves on it. I was just trying to think what kind of leaves would go on it. I don't know. There's a lot of work that I want to do to these things. I want to like kind of clean up the base on them. And there's a lot of problems that people get into with their perception, and they don't realize it. You create biases, it almost seems silly. I really wish that it wasn't something that was an actual thing that occurs, but racism still kind of exists around the world in a prejudge. We're always going to be able to see the difference between our colors, skin color and whatnot. So racism's always going to kind of exist, but I think people, if anybody's going to judge anybody, they should judge it more on like how they act instead of just a blatant skin color. That seems like that might be problematic. But it's kind of a difficult question because I don't like to tell people what to think. I want them to kind of come to their own conclusions themselves. Trust and fear in perception. See, that's kind of one of the things one of the things I was going to be getting around to is how do we gain trust? How do we build trust? I think that the truest and best way, there's a lot of different ways you could con your way into getting trust. But the truest and best way is to be a trustful person, is to be trustworthy and be full of trust. And that doesn't mean that you just, hand your car keys over to random people. That's reckless. That's not trustworthy. Trustworthy is more makes less rational decisions. In the perception level of trust, like that's actually so a psychologist, the first thing that they're going to do is try to gain your trust, because people build perceptive barriers. Like they will actually take what they perceive and they'll put it through this other little portion of their brain. They'll run it through this extra little filter that looks for possible offensive things. Like they could be looking, where's the attack? That's the main question that comes through when that trust is not there. And you can see it a lot of times on chats and stuff. I've seen a lot of people get into arguments, and they're even kind of talking about the same thing, and they'll kind of get into this argument. A lot of times it's the result of an egotistical pride battle that's going on within the individual, within actually each. I've seen it where both people are doing the same thing, and it's like two mirrors are arguing. And it's easy to do. It's easy to do. And how do we, where's the ground? Here's the thing that we should all ask ourselves throughout our entire journey of perception, awareness, and mental programming is, how do you know that what you know is true? How do you know when you've gathered enough evidence? Because if you really look at the thought process, you never really truly know anything. Like everything, all your thoughts and like every decision that you make, it's kind of like an approximation. Like you gather enough data to where your brain recognizes the patterns well enough to where it trusts to make the decision. So, in that we see a little bit of a hack, recognizing patterns. I've seen a lot of people within the field that kind of summate that's what we are, is just a pattern recognition device. That they just kind of see that that's all we really are, in like the summation of a being is that we're just a recorder. And I can debunk that using quite a few different sciences. Neurology, biology, and physics has pretty much conclusively shown that you cannot separate yourself from your environment, that your perception of the environment actually has an effect on the environment. There's a multitude of studies that have been done, but when you talk to a biologist, and they ask for a definition of self, if they gave you the really true definition, I feel it would go something like this: you are the complete being of ego and homeostasis environment. And what homeostasis is how you live. And that's huge. That's talking about the sun and the stars and the galactic formations, and like that everything is interdependent and interconnected to you. Like it's all fundamentally you. And that's why your perception of things is interactory. It interacts with its environment. If you're familiar with fractal geometry, fractal algorithms, a very, very fundamental fractal algorithm is Z equals Z squared plus C. This is a loop variable function. So a variable that it produces is put back into itself. It grows upon itself in a multitude of ways. Yeah, we should all kind of know this by now. It's just it's such an obvious trait in existence that is so easily overlooked by many. And it has a lot of value because, well, for one, we've actually seen it have value in generating simulations in video games. Just that little aspect allowed us to generate graphical structures. But you can use that idea, and it extrapolates even to the thought process, which is why you want to start getting control of the conception of your perceptions. One of the things that I like to say, it feels good coming off the tongue. If you want to become the driver of the boat that you ski behind, because a lot of people are just kind of skiers on a boat getting pulled down the river of time. But if you want to be the driver of that boat, you have to get in control of your conception of your perceptions. Because your perceptions are just kind of like these sensors that are always like beep, 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 beep. They're trying to sense reality. This one senses temperature. This one senses pressure. This one senses graphical data. Your eyeball sense graphical data. And all these processes are going on and being assembled in your brain to construct your reality. So the question comes, everybody's had that mystical experience. Am I creating this? Or am I perceiving what's about to happen? Or what WTF? Am I making this happen? Or is it happening to me? Or do I know what's going to happen next? We've all had these mystical experiences. Some people don't want to talk about it because of the implications. You start opening up, and the implications behind this, it leads to like paranormal experiences, and it's kind of a scary event for some people. But the reality is that it's a common experience. It's not an insane person experience to have this event happen, have this awareness. So we gain control of the conception of our perceptions. The concept, the beginning. Conception is the beginnings of our perceptions. Gaining control of that it can be a challenging thing to do, but it's necessary. Because if you're a skier, then you know what the answer is. You're getting pulled behind a boat that's going down a river. And if you've been a skier, you can, if anybody's skied on a boat, you can scream, be like, hey, go faster. And they'll stop the boat and be like, what? You got to go get plaster. They won't know. They don't know what you're saying. You go faster, and they think you're waving for them to stop. You say you're waving stop, and they think you're saying go faster. It's a difficult, unless you have preset communication going down between the skier and the driver, you're a victim. A lot of people are victims, and they don't know. They've been brought up in a society operating under symbolic interactionism. That's how they've learned things. And most people that get to the age of 6, and the plasticity of the brain essentially goes away, and they kind of stop growing in this way, and they stop learning how to learn. And then that's the only way that they learn things is through symbolic interactionism. So that they just learn that the red thing with that STOP, that means that's I'm supposed to stop there. They're not able to apply that data elsewhere. And that's an extreme kind of nominal example, but I'm sure you can see the application about how that can get really a broad application there. So we gotta get a hold of that steering wheel. How is that done? Our Sufis or yogis, we got all sorts of techniques. In short, what you have to do is you have to return to the mental plasticity of your infancy. You can use chemicals. You can use walking meditations. You can use whatever tool you use. Sometimes you could be walking down the street and boom, it just happens to you, Satori. Oh, you feel it. All of a sudden, you've become one, and you can completely control. And a lot of times we get stuck up in the mystical experience of the situation, and we just kind of get carried away, and we forget to stop and be like, wait a minute, why am I thinking these things? Why do I think X, Y, and Z about this person? Why do I think X, Y, and Z about this situation? In these times of mystical experience, when the brain is returned to a childlike state of plasticity, it is highly advantageous to start looking at your fundamental thoughts. For instance, when you see a cross, when you see a T, when you see a multiplication symbol, when you see an X, when you see that symbol, which is the exact same symbol, all those things I said, exact same symbol. And all those answers are kind of wrong. It's not a T, it's not an X, it's not a window, it's none of those things. I actually got one of my students calling in right now. Yeah, he's just wanting to talk. I'm not going to answer it. Sorry, buddy. I'll answer it. Oh, no, he hung up. All right. Well, that was Dan. That was one of my students. I'm actually going to be having an interview with him. I don't know, sometime soon. Would you say those symbols are like Platonic in that they exist in itself? Yes, they do. They exist. Correct. Here, I'll communicate here on the chat so I can I'll kind of elaborate a little bit further over here. So you got all these different symbols. You got that. Oops. You got that. And that symbol could be a T and X, a multiplication symbol, a window. These are all subjective assigned meanings to this symbol. These are meanings that we've assigned to this through the human understanding of what we've been through. That's a T and X, Y, or excuse me, that's a T, that's an X, multiplication symbol, window, crucifix. I've heard a lot of different things. This is actually the kind of the test that I've developed, the symbolism test. And what it does is it shows that when we look at something, we can all think a multitude of different things. That could be a plus sign. That could be an X, a T. Look, here's a T. Oh, that's a little different. That's a little bit different. Not much. I think y'all getting the point. So what is the pragmatic assertion of that symbol? The pragmatic assertion of that symbol is, like, let's say if you went to some other species in Veda, like the Pleiadians or whatever, some sort of alien species, and you went there and you said, hey, what is this? They wouldn't say it's a cross. They don't know Jesus. But what they would say is they would say positive and negative space, quadrants, or intersecting lines. There's actually probably a variety of different, pragmatic answers for this symbol, but it's eternal truth. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about something completely different. Would you like to elaborate on that first? And I'm interested in what you're talking about. Okay, I think I follow what you're saying. I follow here. Yeah, these are fundamental building blocks. The geometric fundamental building blocks of existence. If you start looking at the very root structure of, atomic structure of water or carbon. Yeah, true. Geometry is only able to look in a certain way. And this is an advantage to perception training, is because we gain the ability to be like, okay, how does it goes this way? Yeah. Oh, cool. That's how geometry looks at it. Well, let's put on our physics hat and let's look at it under how physics looks at it. Looks at it how heart surgeons look at it. We can, when you get into high level perceptive training, you can literally turn off how you would normally think of something, and then you can turn on a different way to think about it. It yields a bunch of data. It really does. It's highly advantageous. And I think that all politicians should be heavily schooled in perceptual training. I think it should be like, in order to even become a politician, you should have to go to a school that I teach, of course. It should be me that teaches it. Who else? I should be in control of the world, right? Anyways, that's a huge LOL. I'm afraid of controlling things. I don't even like controlling my kids, man. It's hard for me to control my kids. Everybody says they're good, but man, I have troubles controlling them. I don't like disciplining. I really dislike to discipline. I just wish I could come in and be like, okay, everybody stand up straight, breathe correctly, eat the correct food, and make the correct decisions, guys. But man, what's the correct decision? I don't know half the time. That's why I want you guys to make the correct decision. But that's how it goes for me. I don't want to be in control. Obviously, like, look, I came in as the skier behind a boat. I don't think any of us really want to be in control. I think all of us just want to be on a ride, skiing behind a boat that we know is going to just go everywhere cool. But the scary thing is, dude, is we're not just a skier behind the boat. Like, we are the boat and the river and the air, and like all of a sudden, democracy's out the window. It's all our fault. We got to make sure we really pay attention to what we're doing with ourselves. Then all of a sudden it's my fault that I didn't get all the groceries, and it's not like somebody else's fault or whatever example comes to mind. And so we get to this, there's mental heuristics that one can set up. There's shortcuts that you can set up to return to this mental plastic state of your youth. And in this state, you look at subjects, symbols, conversations, whatever it is. You look at X and you allow yourself to perceive it. One thing that's necessary, when you look at something, that's kind of directing your attention. And then if you try to understand it, then that means you're applying the data to like a format that it has to go through for your acceptance. But if you just accept what's right there in front of you, it's a little bit of a different approach. And that's the approach that one gets in this plastic state. It's like an oceanic. You kind of can't really differentiate a whole lot of things when you're in a highly mental plastic state, at least the first few times. It can be very challenging to differentiate what is the truth of things. I had a student that he entered training, and he was getting into he got to the point, and I was like, okay, he was ready. I was gonna say a couple things to him that we're gonna kind of break his symbolic interactionism. It was gonna kind of break this mainstay of him accepting that he don't know shit. And mind you, something I'm always kind of like I'm always kind of thinking I might be wrong. And I think that this is necessary to see true reality. If you start thinking you're just right all the time, you're going to just start seeing that you're right all the time. And then when things don't go how you want, your brain does this thing, cognitive dissonance defensive measures. Your brain will actually take measures. It will make you feel weird about saying and doing something. Like, this is the whole point behind, to be a good liar, you have to be comfortable with cognitive dissonance. Because when you lie, your brain, when you say something false that comes out of your mind, or if you say, I ate unicorn shit for breakfast, excuse my language, that's completely wrong. But it's when you say it, when you say something that's really false, your brain, if you really pay attention, you can notice that your brain kind of goes like a little trigger. It'll be like, oh, haha. It'll kind of like LOL. If you pay attention to the comment section of your brain, when you say a lie, it'll kind of go, doo-doo-doo, LOL, haha, you're lying. Unless you're a sociopath. Now, sociopaths, dude, they get so good at lying. You wouldn't believe the case studies I've seen with sociopaths of the deceptions that I've seen various sociopaths try to pull, even at high level clinical. Like they'll be in a straitjacket, and the lies that they will come up with. You know, 10 minutes ago, they're bashing their heads and screaming that they let them out of here. Otherwise, they're going to call the King of France. And then 10 minutes later, they'll be like, hey, I'm okay, man. Really, I'm okay. Just, I'm sorry about what I said. And I was just upset. And they'll come up with they'll sound legit, that they actually really feel bad about what they did. And man, they're never going to do that again. And as soon as you're like, listen, I'm not letting you out of that for X amount of time or until the sedatives kick in, they flip out. They're like, they just kind of like flip out then. Because the mask's over, they realize, oh, I don't have to wear the mask anymore, and then they take it off. So those are fun patients to deal with, and a big reason why I left the field is because I didn't want to really exist around a bunch of people that were completely crazy. I didn't want to. It was just like, man, this is going to make me sick being around this. I'm already crazy enough, and I'm hanging around crazy people. What am I thinking? Dang, man. So I kind of got out, got into research. But clinical studies weren't for me. I didn't like clinical. But it just shows how none of us really know, man, like who's behind the mask next door. So I'm using a fan brush to kind of do these leaves here because I want to create anomalies in them. And I want them to kind of like have an angle to it. So it's not what you typically use, like a fan brush like this for this application. I typically wouldn't do this like this, but I want it to have like little like kind of fanny weird anomalies to it. Yeah, see, it makes kind of like little flicks. It goes like fluke, fluke, fluke. Makes kind of like little valleys, like little flicks. And then what I'm going to do, I think, yeah. And then look, it snowed over on this tree. I'm going to take, and on the little like high parts after it dries, because I'm using a lot of paint. So after it dries, I'm actually going to go, and I think I'm going to put like, not really snow caps. I don't want to use white. I think I'm going to use a green or something. I think it snows green on this planet. I don't think it snows white. I think it snows green. You know why? Because it's weird. And weird's not normal. And that's kind of like the central theme behind my paintings. If anybody ever sees and kind of looks at it, like they all kind of, I'm not very good. I kind of suck. Like I can't make anything look real. See some painters, they're just so amazing. Like Ross, that dude Ross with paints his little buddy trees. That guy is amazing, man. Just a gem. I suck. All I can do is like crazy psychedelic stuff. Like I've tried doing a couple, I tried like a self-portrait and I've tried a bunch of different stuff. And I don't know, everybody's got different talents, and I don't think my talent is photographic realism. I really don't. I don't feel like my talent's photographic realism. So I'm kind of giving up on it, I'm just like, well, I'm not going to be able to do this very well, so I'm just going to focus on doing what I can do well. And what I can do well is just kind of like this weird, I feel I call it curing, because I want everything to grow upon itself. I don't want it to kind of look like it was all. I kind of want to like go for this natural occurrence feel to it. The color that I'm using is this is a cobalt blue, an acrylic color, acrylic cobalt blue. Because I don't want any of the smears to overlap. I put too many right there. I don't like that. Looks uneven. Our brain goes through so many, your visual cortex, it's a gem of an operational device. It really is amazing what it is able to do, but it has a lot of adherent problems. A lot of like what you see, of what you choose to attend to, is like the result of reasons to attend to things. So you can kind of create like a conceptual blind spot in your perceptual awareness. You're perceiving things, your brain's perceiving it, but you weed it out. You stop looking there because it's not important to look there, type of thing. That's what it is. My music turned off. You gotta love YouTube. They started putting commercials every 3 seconds on their channels. That's fun. Remember when YouTube was like the Wild West? And there was no kind of parental controls or anything. Just at times you just turn into like a crazy narcissistic battleground. But you know what? Here's the thing, guys. Okay, let's say that this is an enemy attacking us. This enemy that's attacking our way of life, our culture. If you stand pure and true to yourself, that enemy is not ever really going to be able to take you out. We've seen some periods in history, Xerxes attacking the 300 Spartans. We remember Xerxes as a tyrant with a massive army that was held back by 300 men. That's what he's remembered as. That's what he lives on as. His last death has not occurred. You know, you have 3 deaths. When the body dies, like when it goes into the hole and everybody says goodbye to you, and then when your name's spoken that last time, you know, and the last memory of you exists. Got another phone call here. Nope, not answering it. You know, and there's a way to gain a lot of control over yourself. Once you reach this level where you can gain mental plasticity, you can program a lot of things into your brain. It's a very valuable technique to get familiar with. A lot of different ways to do it. Some people have a dedication, you know, like monks. They kind of dedicate their lives to getting to this state with this oneness, you know, where you're kind of like the one with everything. Some people happen across it, you know, it just kind of happens to them. Some people study their whole lives for it. I think it should be kind of taught as like a 101 course. You know, as soon as you learn how to read and write, they should go right into training you how to operate your brain, how to operate your body. Because if somebody doesn't get fundamental control over those aspects of the self, of the brain and the body, which are the fundamental aspects to how it feels to be who you are, you can't ever really, you're always going to be a victim. You're not ever going to understand. You know, true self-acknowledgement, it's just not going to be capable. And there's a lot of different, I've seen a lot of different theories out there, you know, about how elites trying to keep people down and stuff. And I can't say that that's true. And I also can't say it's untrue. It seems like there's a lot of weird things that have happened, you know, weird decisions that have been made by the government to do certain things. And some of it seems pretty nefarious. But focusing on that happening is not going to help you not go there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to go towards the target you're aiming at. Almost always. You know, can we time travel? Can we jump realities or quantum realities? Is that possible? Well, that's a pretty far-fetched, you know, fantasy. That sounds fantastic. So let's call that a fantasy. But, you know, it might just be a fantasy too. You know, it might be stuck being in the reality that you're in, which just adds more reason why you should get control of how you're perceiving this reality that you're in, you know. And then we got these words that we use. And you'll notice in common language, people often say, do you know what I mean? No. No, we don't know what you mean. No one actually knows what anyone means. When I say red, you don't know what I mean. You know, no one actually really really actually knows, but we all know enough to communicate, right? We all know enough to make each other feel like valid and like your opinion matters, and we should do such. There's a lot of value in that. You know, you can't there's no way one person is the source of all data. They have to learn that data from somewhere. one, it's like against the very fundamental structure of what it is. So, but if anybody remembers before Google, boy, like if there was a kid that was really smart, he was like the smart kid. You know what I'm saying? When you wanted to know something, you go to him. Now we got Google. When you want to know something, you go to Google. You know, so that's playing a whole new social dimension. I almost wonder if that's a reason why we've had such a if you look at a lot of studies that are done in socialization, you'll note they're noticing a trend towards less socialization in comparison with times in the past, like in the 60s, in the 70s. And they noticed that through these eras, since the advent of television, it's really been since the advent of radio is when they first started noticing it. But television started really kicking it in, especially in the 20th century with the advent of laptops and cell phones. And what's that give that, everybody has it everywhere. So it can facilitate anti-socialism because people don't need to socialize with other people to get information anymore. They can get their information from the internet. They can get whatever they want from the internet. So there's no need to socialize with the class clown bully anymore. You don't have to be victim to their narcissistic games that they play to try to make you feel like you're part of the in-group. You can go find an in-group in a chat room somewhere. You can find a nice movie stream and plop down and be plenty entertained. So the need for socialization has decreased significantly, which furthermore increases the need for perceptual training. Because we still have to interact. There's always going to be interaction points in society. And in order to do that effectively, especially with the tools that we have at hand, we have to be able to understand each other. And true compassion starts with self-understanding, I feel. It's very difficult to be truly compassionate towards yourself if you don't understand yourself. And that when you understand yourself, you know the process it took you to get where you are. And so you have this higher compassion level for people then. Because you know that, you're honest with yourself to get to where you are. So you know the truth. And you realize that you're probably not the only one that's a rascal. We're all rascals. No one's. I don't know very many people you can give a whole bunch of money to and expect them to not do something. Here, hold this $10 million for me while I go over there. Yeah. Boy, that'd be hard not to run. $10 million is a lot of money, man. Whew. Take $10 million to Latin America, you can build yourself an entire palace complex. You live a long time for that much money. Really, really well. And those are the thoughts that go through people's minds, So how do we get to where we can trust one another? How are we going to get to where we're not fearing one another? Well, at higher levels of perception, you can kind of perceive a narcissist. You can perceive somebody that's trustworthy. You perceive what they're doing. You recognize the patterns of what they're doing, and you can foresee agendas that they may have. And so you know not to enter business ties with them. And so you perceive things. Data flows in through your various sensors. It's really, if you want to look at the whole process simultaneously, it's going on simultaneously. You walk outside and your visual stimulus, auditory stimulus, and a host of physiological senses, temperature, pressure. Your subconscious self has a high level of perception analysis that when one gains a good connection with this element of the self, the subconscious, as it's often referred to, all of a sudden you can feel when a storm's coming. Like, you can really interpret various patterns that your brain perceives. You can see these, you can feel these patterns in your body, and you listen to what your body tells, and your body says, oh, every time this pattern happens, this occurs. And it's like 100% correct. We call it getting in the flow state or whatever. I think that a huge aspect of the flow state is just listening to your body, what your body says. Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Got a lot more to talk about with perception, but that's all I'm going to be doing for painting a little while for now. I got a paintbrush to clean, and I need to get something to drink. So thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you guys more. Please share, subscribe, and feel free to comment and tell me what you think about stuff I say and how you could affect you, and I'll try to address those things. May you guys have a blessed, blessed day.